So if you don't mind, one of the things that you mentioned a little bit ago was how sometimes your own experiences would get in the way of how you could help. For example, the parents that would come to you and would have certain issues with their own kids, you would have like trouble helping them because of your own experiences. If you don't mind, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, like what are some of these experiences that shaped, like that shaped you as who you are?
It's a good question. So I am the oldest son of 6 kids, and my mom is a single woman. She's been divorced twice.
Where are you from?
I don't even know where I'm from technically. So both my parents are Pakistani.
Okay.
I was born in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
I lived in Austin. I lived in Texas for about 8 years. I went overseas for about 8 to 10 years.
To Pakistan.
I went to Pakistan for 3.5 years. I went to Bangladesh for 4 years, and I lived in Qatar for.
Bangladeshi.
Yeah, really? Yeah, I lived in Dhaka, Savar for a little while.
Oh my God.
I went to a madrasa there. Yeah, so my stepfather is Bengali. Or my ex-stepfather, he was Bengali, and he got a good job there. I'm like summarizing very quickly, but I lived there for 4 years. Was there for a while. Then I went to Qatar, and then after that I came to New Jersey. So I came to New Jersey in 2010.
So you spent quite a bit of time. You've literally been everywhere. My God.
Yeah. So I've been. Wow. I came to New Jersey in 2010. Here's the thing, though. I didn't just like. There's a lot happened during that time, right? So my life kind of changed like after 9/11. So when 9/11 happened, shortly after, my dad was deported from the United States because my dad did not have his papers.
Okay.
And he
just to get a quick reflection. So you've traveled the thing, but like, where were you when not? Which part?
I was in Texas.
Okay,
I remember.
Texas, okay.
I was in first grade. I was in an Islamic school called Peace Elementary. Everything was going great, and I remember watching the TV. All the teachers were there. We had a half day. We went home, right? My mom and dad were having like problems at the time. After 9/11, in particular in Texas, there was a lot of like, I guess, secrets that came to light. And while that was happening, law enforcement were basically cracking down on like the Muslim communities.
Okay. By secrets you meant particularly in Texas, like cases of like maybe extremism thoughts. Like,
not even that. Like I don't even talk about anything serious, right? Like I'm talking about like family issues and stuff like that. I see. Like basically it hit people so much that, you know what I mean? Like secrets were coming out. Like people who were closeted atheists, like, publicly announced that they were atheists, right? People who were like having marital problems were like, because like it was just being exposed one after the other. And in my case, the fact that my dad was I don't want to use the word illegal, but he just was undocumented, right? That came to light, as well as his history in Pakistan, because they were literally cracking down on people. So like maybe people, let's say for example, a husband and wife didn't know your past, they knew now because the cops were telling them, right? Just to frame people and whatever. So my dad was caught for being undocumented, and he was sent overseas to Pakistan. My mom, like a little before that, actually, I guess this is like a span of like 2 or 3 years, right? And during those 2 or 3 years, my mom and dad finally had a divorce. My mom's remarried to my stepfather, who, he's a story in itself, right? We were 4 siblings at the time. So when around 2002, I want to say, or 2001, late 2001 or 2002, my dad was deported. My dad was deported. I didn't know what that meant. All I remember was seeing my dad in prison. Like, he was wearing an orange jumpsuit, right? He was super scrawny. And, I loved my dad, even though he wasn't like, they had a lot of problems. I saw a lot of things, right, in the household. I did love my dad. So he was deported. I heard so many different stories of how he was deported, right? Till this day, I don't necessarily know the 100% truth. I'm content with that, though.
And you don't want to know the truth.
I mean, I feel like I've kind of created my own version of the truth, and I'm happy with that. Like because no one's gonna fully admit, right? Because there's like this one thing that you kind of have to learn in life is that there isn't one version of the story, right? Everyone has their truths, and you have to honor all those, right? So just like history, right? Like history, we only see the winner's side, but in reality, there's more than one version of it. So you can either choose to do your digging and create your own depiction of what happened, or you can just believe what one person tells you. So I chose this is obviously, I was very young, so as time has passed, I've learned a lot more, and a lot more have come to I've realized, and as an adult, I've seen things more differently. than I did as a kid. But at the time, all I just saw was my dad was deported, right? So in 2003, I decided to move to. I'm gonna summarize it because this is a very long story. But 2003, I went to go visit my dad.
You don't have to.
Oh, okay, awesome. All right, so
our podcast go for like 2-3 hours.
Okay, so, but we'll see how this goes. So 2003, my mom has 5 kids now, and I went to Pakistan to go visit my dad for a month. I remember I was in 3rd grade. I was starting to do bad.
Has your mom remarried at this point?
Yeah, my mom remarried my stepfather. My mom married my stepfather, and she had 1 kid. So now we're 5, right?
Exactly.
All 4 of us from my dad, we went to go visit my dad for a month. We were supposed to only go for a month. For whatever reason, we ended up staying for 3 years, right? That was not planned. During those 3 years, whether we like to admit it or not, we didn't go to school. We weren't homeschooled or anything like that. My dad came from a very underprivileged community. He basically came from like the Newark of Pakistan. Like it's called Liaqatabad, and it's a place in Pakistan that people say that if you're from there, you either become 2 or 3 things, which is you either become a crook, you become a murderer, or you just become a thug, or you become a thug. So my dad's family, obviously lived there. They experienced things there. So we were there. My dad.
You and all your siblings?
Yeah, so 4 of us, right? The 5th one was with my mom, and my mom had another kid while we were away. Right. My mom was dealing with her own challenges at this time, while we were trying to survive in Pakistan, right?
So if I can ask,
go ahead.
Why did you guys stay there for 3 years?
So it's very complicated. Like, I don't know the real reason.
Okay.
Like it's to simply put is just that it's perceptions of what happened. Okay. Right. So what is the factual reason? I don't know. But basically, if I have to dumb it down a lot, my dad didn't want us to leave. Okay. Right. My dad thought that he could take care of us on his own. Right. And he tried his best to do that with whatever resources were given to him. Yeah. All credit to the guy. But education was just not a priority. Right. So. Anywho, we stayed there for about 3 years. Eventually, my dad and mom worked out something, and we reunited. We stayed in Islamabad, where my mom's side of the family's from, and it's more of an affluent area. Mm-hmm. And we kind of try to figure out what our next plans were. So this is around 2005. We were supposed to come to the United States in 2005. I remember I was so excited. I was like, we're coming back to America. I'm about to go to Walmart and pick a Pokemon card. That's the first thing I'm going to do, right? I was so excited.
How old were you at this point?
I want to say I was about 10, 11 years old.
Okay.
Right? So I was, I think 11, yeah. So.
And this is after you had already spent 3 years in Pakistan.
Yeah, but 3 years in Pakistan. My stepfather moved to Bangladesh. He's like, we should all come to Bangladesh. Now, here's the thing. This is, I'm very embarrassed to admit this, but I'm being honest here. My stepfather is light skinned, like he's white. Okay, right. So I assumed, based off of how eloquent he is, based off of how he looks, that everyone in Bangladesh is just like him. So I was like, Bangladesh, sure, it's probably better than Pakistan, right? So my siblings and I, because we're kids,
By the way, we have a pass on this podcast to say whatever we want about Bangladesh because of it.
He always says the podcast, don't do business in Bangladesh.
No.
On the podcast.
He listens it to me.
So we're like, sure, this is great. So I remember like it was yesterday. My stepfather came to pick us up in a van, and I was like, he has a car. This is already amazing, right?
That's really rare for Bangladesh. Damn. And a van? Holy moly!
It wasn't his. It turns out.
How does it fit in the streets? What?
Wow. So he picks us up, and it turns out that he didn't plan out us actually coming. Turns out, if you don't know, that there was a war between Pakistan and Bangladesh, and because of that, there's a lot of animosity, at least in the Bangladeshi side, right?
Exactly.
So my stepfather's family really didn't they didn't really get along with my mom, but I will put it nicely, right? So
did that change how did your stepfather's family view you and your siblings?
So we were kids, so I can't really explain, right? And this is where like earlier I was like being a little hesitant to say this, but it wasn't my story to tell. So I'm gonna make sure that like throughout the story, like everything I'm telling you, I'm really filtering out and make sure that I only mention my experiences, not the rest of my family's, right? But basically, like my mom did struggle with my stepfather's family. My stepfather, for whatever reason, dumped us in a village, like for 6 months. And when I'm talking village, I'm talking about like no house, everything. Bangladesh village. It's a village. Yeah, it's called Savar. So Savar is the outskirts of Dhaka. It's basically a place where, so it's a place that, like, just to describe it, right? There's just like animals everywhere. There's no cars anywhere, right? Village, most of the homes were not even homes. Like they were made out of like mud huts, and also like bamboos with like steel steel sheets, right? So there was this one big house that was there, and it was like gated and everything. My stepfather was Tablighi Jamati. For those you know what Tablighi Jamaat is, right? So do you know Tablighi Jamaat? So Tablighi Jamaat is like this is a very, I don't know if this will be very ignorant of me to say it, but the only way that I can describe it very simply is like they're the Muslim version of Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
Yeah. You ever been to a masjid and I'm just gonna. All right. You ever been to a masjid and like someone's like, "Brother, come here. Please have a chat with us."
I've never seen that.
So have you? Ever heard of saying? Oh well, we're not even gonna go about it. It's just basically and I'm not trying to discredit them in any way, right? Yeah. Great work happens there. No, they just prioritize a certain kind of like a certain way of doing practicing their deen than the other. Like every door to door. Door to door thing, right?
Like masjid to masjid.
Yeah. So their focus is more of dawah. Dawah is very important to them, and they do dawah by leaving their houses and going into the path of Allah.
So they'll go on like 40-day.
Yeah.
Can you say that word one more time?
Tablighi Jamaat.
I feel like I've heard this before. There's a Bengali word for the people who just go and like.
That's what it is. It's Tablighi. They're Tablighi. Have you ever heard of Dongi? Dongi Ijtima?
No, but the other one sounded more familiar.
Do you speak Bengali, by the way?
A little bit. I can understand it.
I imagine you pick some up.
Yeah.
I understand it very well, but like I do not have the tongue for it at all.
I understand it. So I definitely forgot a lot of it, but there was a time where I could speak it fluently.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I imagine you had to.
I had to, because people would make fun of you in Bangla, and you had to understand what they're saying. So I needed to make fun of them back.
So it's being at the.
That's a strong force, by the way.
Is being at Tablighi like a good thing or bad?
So that's the thing, right? Like so like I'm not gonna comment on that, but you will kind of hear my opinion through my story, right?
Okay.
So because like I said, they do. I don't want to discredit them. They do great work, just like as human beings, right? And we talked about this earlier, always taking the good from something and kind of leaving the bad, right? I view Islam that way too. There's so many sects in Islam, right? Sufism, Tablighi Jamaati, Salafism, right? Whatever. And there is definitely wisdom behind each initiative and like what they are, and everyone wants to there's definitely wisdom behind each and every way of life, right? I am so uneducated in this topic that I can't even give a comment on it, right? Yeah. Like that's how uneducated I am. All I can say is that I chose to look in the good with any group of Muslims that I've ever experienced. Yeah, that includes Sufism, Salafism, and even Tablighi Jamaatism, right? Like I don't even know if you say ism, right? Well, just put ism on everything, right? Yeah. But
they're highly memed, by the way.
They are, unfortunately, they do good work, but unfortunately they are memed.
I might be completely missing it here. We can check this out of the podcast. You might have to edit this out, but I feel like I thought my dad said or something, or my mom said that those are respected people, and if you want to devote your life and give up all material possessions, you go do that. Because they're nomadic.
Yeah. So if you go to we'll actually get there. Yeah. So it's very true that in the Eastern world, Tablighi Jamaat is actually very respected. Yeah. Right. In particular, in the Indo-Pak countries. Yeah. Right. The hubs are there, and I actually went to school in one of the hubs. So in India, it's called Nizamuddin. In Pakistan, it's called Raiwind. In Bangladesh, there's two. One is in Chittagong and one's in Dhaka. The one in Dhaka is called Kakrail, and that's where I studied. And we'll get to there in a little bit. But I stayed in this village for about 6 months. Still no schooling, no education, whatever, right? So at this point, I am turning 12, and I don't know. Remember, I left school when I started 3rd grade, So I know how to addition. I know how to do addition and subtraction, but I don't know how to divide. I barely knew how to multiply.
Yeah.
And I barely knew how to I knew how to read, right? But I used to love reading, so I continued to read advanced books, right? Like that was just my hobby. Yeah. My siblings, on the other hand, didn't know how to read or write, like flat out. So just keep that in mind, like the whole time. Like most of them didn't know. At least the ones who didn't go to school around this time, right? So
and you're the oldest.
I'm the oldest, right? So 6 months in Savar, and then after Savar we went to Dhaka, right? We finally met up with my stepfather's family. We lived in a very privileged area in Dhaka for a little while. But then eventually I think my stepfather thought about, okay, you know, these kids are growing up, but they're not really getting any education. What is the second best? So for him, he was like, you know what? Why don't I just put them into a madrasa? So, yeah, so he put myself and my brother. So I am turning 12. Abdurrahman, my brother, is turning, he's turning 10. And my sister, who's turning 9, he put us 3 in the madrasa. My youngest 3 siblings, they went to school. So they, the fourth one, who's from my dad, right? He is at an age where he's kind of behind, but he's like only supposed to be. He's only 1 or 2 years behind, right? Yeah. My youngest 2, they're at the age where they're supposed to be, like, because they weren't supposed to go to school. So then they went to school and they're like good. Yeah. So my sister went to an all girls madrasa. My brother and I went to Kakral, right? Now, I want to first paint a picture.
Very familiar.
Yeah, so I want to paint a picture real quick. My brother and I were not like the average kids of our age, right? We didn't go to school for like 4 years, right? Yeah. We didn't have any friends that were our age. You know what I mean? So we used to hang out with like a bunch of people who were like older than us. So we didn't understand what is socially acceptable and appropriate for our age. Right. So we didn't know like anything, and we knew things that we shouldn't know, right? Like just like whatever. Right. So when we went to this,
there was a disconnect, kind of.
A huge disconnect, right? Like I didn't know how to behave my age. Okay. Right. Yeah. So we go to this madrasa. This madrasa is about 6 floors tall.
It's a big one.
It's a big madrasa, right? The markas, right? The hub. The first 3 floors are basically where the people from across the world would come to like congregate and then plan out where they were going to go in Bangladesh. So it was like a headquarters. Yeah. You arrived at the airport, a truck came and brought you to the markas. The first 3 floors is basically where you stay until you find your crew, and then where your assignment is, where you're going to go to preach Islam, right? So this was international. So people from all over the world would come here. I've seen types of people that I am not proud to admit, and then people who I'm very like confident to admit, right? Like what kinds of people. And I shall describe some of them in the future. Those were the first 3 floors, right? The first floor has 2 kitchens, a very small kitchen for the foreigners and a very big kitchen for like the locals. Okay. The next 2 floors are where the Bengali kids were. So that's
3 and 2.
So 3 and 2, right? So now we're on floor 4 and floor 5. Okay. Now this is the madrasa, right? So this is where kids are studying alim, like Darul Uloom like type classes, and then people who are trying to become hafiz, right? So we're trying to memorize Quran. That's what I know. Yeah. Now there is a small room on the 5th floor. That's just like a few steps up, and that room is the 6th floor, which is the foreign wing for students. So basically, that room was filled with...
And that's where you were?
That's where I was. So that room was filled with 40 men, ages between 18 to 45 years old, who devoted their lives to studying Islamic academia, right? Now, that sounds all good, but here's the thing. Most of these kids were not there by choice. They were kind of like...
They
were kind of like delinquents in their countries who their parents were like, the only way you can bring honor is if you go to this, Tabligh Jamaat, and then they'll get sent out, and then they hear from their peers about this madrasa. I was like, hey, you get free food, you get to do whatever you want, no one bothers you, and you can chill here, and then you could go back home as a hero.
So this is like, you know how like some people, like, we'll hear stories in our community of like, maybe someone is like really promiscuous in high school, and then their parents send them to Pakistan. maybe if
this is an equivalent of that,
where they would be sent.
Yeah, so this was like, well, not they per se, but like, in this case, people who knew about the Tabligh Jamaat, they would be sent. So there was a lot of kids like that. And then there was actually genuine people who like I still can't believe that I met them. Like people who have like, there were people who like had dreams of like seeing the Prophet. There were people who like, were able to not eat for days, and just study in a corner. There were very like unique people who like modern science may not be able to comprehend, right? Yeah. But then there was also like the hooligans and the people who were like, stupid, right? Yeah. So it was a mix of that. But here's a problem with that place. This room was, I just want to paint a picture. Just imagine a rectangular room, right? One room, then a small room over here, which is basically a room where the bathrooms are. So there's 3 showers, 3 bathroom stalls. All of them are open from the top, so you can peek on from the other, right, if you wanted to, which people did. And then there was like a wudu area, right? The next room that's right beside it is the sick room, basically where students who got sick, they used to sleep there, and that's where the ustad's bathroom was, right? And the rectangular room, the windows were all steel. So they were barred from the inside and from the outside. So they're barred up, and then there was a steel plate that covered it. So there's 2 ways to prevent people to... Yeah, if you close the windows, then there's no lights in,
right?
Sounds
just like Darul Uloom in Buffalo. It sounds like the...
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But Darul Uloom in Buffalo still had like... Well, we'll get there. So
also, did you guys live here? Or like...
Yeah, we'll get there. This is a boarding school type of thing where you just sleep there. Literally, so that's the thing. This rectangular room, in the corner of it, everyone's trunks were there. So trunks were basically a steel case that had all your belongings. And then you had a sleeping bag they used to put on top. We all slept on a concrete floor, right? Cold concrete floor, right? And we used to study right in front of our box. Okay. And we used to sleep right in front of our box. We used to go eat downstairs and pray downstairs. So the schedule was this. Oh, and there were 2. The main door was locked from the inside and locked from the outside. So this thick bars of steel, right, was one door, just like literally like a cell. And then this thick steel door that closed it from the top. There was 2 teachers. One used to lock from the outside and he used to go home at night. The other one used to lock from the inside and he used to sleep inside, right? So that way no one could escape, right? Like
a prison.
And with that comes a prison-like mentality.
Yeah.
So we had kids from China, Indonesia. We had people from different parts of Africa. We had people from Russia. We had people from all over, right?
But you're in Bangladesh.
Yeah, but these are foreigner kids foreigner guys that were doing Tabligh Jamaat, right? Internationally, right? They came to Bangladesh. They heard about this program. They decided to stay. 40 of them.
Can they leave willingly?
Wait, real quick.
So I think you continue with the description of madrasa. So you slept and worked basically in front of your trunk.
Yeah,
that's what
and
it was locked. Still
yes, it was locked, right? And it was 40 guys there, 18 to 45-year-olds, right? The reason why they were all foreign because there were people from the foreign, like they would just So
and then I asked you, can they live willingly? Leave willingly.
So yes. So basically, once you sign up for the program, most people, they kind of don't leave until they either finish because there's a lot of there's family pressure. But then there's also like the school itself. The school kind of like, unfortunately, they kind of brainwash you to believe that this is your life, right? So you kind of just stay there and you think that's the rest of your life. Like my brother and I, we stayed there for 4 years. And we thought that was our rest of our lives. Like I had a long-term plan to stay there.
Within that,
I gave up on everything else. This was my life. You know what I mean? And we'll get there. Like you'll see how it happens. But
like the guys from like who came, you see the people from Russia, China.
Yeah.
Like there's no family pressure. I'm assuming they're just.
So there is that because they left their homes, right? They have families back home, and they kind of don't want to leave without any accomplishment, right? This is accomplishment for them.
So is there a finite end to the program? Like here, you're done.
Yeah. So there is a final end to the program, but then there's other things that happen. So it's like an initiation thing to like a. This program in particular was very cultish.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right? And I'm sure that a lot of people definitely benefited from it. Obviously, you do need to keep in mind that this is a perception of at the time, 12-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely biases to what I say. And because I've had a negative experience with this place, I definitely have a negative connotation to this place. But I don't want to discredit all the good this institution has done, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not going to devalue my story in the process, right? So basically, with the gang with the prison environment, there became a gang-like culture where basically the Chinese students would fight against another group. The Indonesians and the Filipinos didn't get along as well. They had gang names. Like one of the gangs was like the Mortuza gang, right? Which I still don't even know what that word means, but it was like the gang. And they were like, what they would do is like they would take ink and they would take pin, and they would like burn it and then like tattoo themselves their gang names. And
wouldn't you get in trouble?
No, like these people, like I'm telling you, these are grown men, man.
Oh like no, but I thought the whole point is like the guy in charge isn't like tattoos are. There's ways to hide things. There's a way to get away with things, right? It's like a prison. Like there's a warden. The warden doesn't know what's actually going on. You know what I mean? And the warden kind of has an idea, but as long as there's peace, they let things slide. You get what I'm saying? So just like that's how the teacher was. It's not even the worst part. Okay, no, I just want to clarify. Is this all madrasas or just this one?
No, this is not like I wouldn't even say this is the entire this room is not a reflection of this whole madrasa, and this madrasa is not a reflection of all madrasas.
So that room is uniquely to this place.
Yeah, and there may be other places that are like this, right? There's good and bad eggs everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Were the Bengali floors, were they more like...
They had their own sets of problems, right? And they were definitely not as bad as this particular case.
They were not like gang...
No, there were no gang issues, but there were definitely issues. Like every group of people, there's always going to be bad and good, right? Yeah. You can either choose to look at the good, you can either choose to look at the bad, right? Regardless, they're both realities. Yeah. So I really hesitate to mention these stories most of the time because I felt like long term. Are we pausing or?
Let's just wait until you. Yeah. It's good, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because whenever you get to the important part, we don't want to miss this.
Yeah. Awesome. So there's good and bad in every situation. I'm always reluctant to mention the story to a few people, especially people who are young and bright, who want to learn their deen, because I realize that when I mention this story, it kind of discourages a lot of people to get into this. Yeah. No, absolutely not. There's beautiful, amazing institutions that I just unfortunately didn't have the privilege to attend, and I just happened to be one of the people who had bad experiences. In no way or form does that mean that someone else will, even if they went to the same institution I went to, right? I just was dealt a bad hand, and khair alhamdulillah, it's my reality, right? But it is a good story, so I like mentioning it, right? So the Indonesians, the Filipinos didn't get along very well, right? There was all this conflict that was there, and at the same time, here's another problem that we used to face. So I'm sure you guys have heard horror stories of what happens in boarding schools. Yeah. Like I'm sure you've heard madrasas. So I'm sure you've heard of things that happen in Catholic schools, happen in Islamic schools, happens in madrasas, right? Yeah. We're just gonna summarize it. All those things are very true. Like I have experienced them firsthand, and I have seen other people who have experienced them. So in some shape or form, I have experienced anything that you've heard of that happens in madrasas, right? And we'll dive into it a little bit, but like just to mention themes: physical abuse, sexual assault, a lot of grooming, a lot of verbal and spiritual abuse, a lot of So like basically, these are things that I have personally, unfortunately, have experienced, and I am very comfortable talking about it at this point in my life, right? Because this is actually when I was mentioning earlier to you guys off the camera. I was mentioning that things that I've experienced, that's kind of what shaped me to who I am, right. And it's kind of made me want to help other people who are in similar situations, right? That's kind of why I got into this field, is because we just don't talk about it enough. Now, I wasn't always like this, right?
Actually, I guess that's what you were about to say. I was going to say, was there a point when you kind of embraced this story?
Yeah. So for a very long time, I actually was very embarrassed about it. I thought that I took it very personally. It really affected me mentally. I didn't know what to do. I had a very dark time when I came to the United States my first year, because I had this world that I lived in with its issues, and now I'm in another world with its own set of issues. Yeah. And I was not built for this world. Right. Like I was groomed and built for a world overseas. Right. So how did I transition for that was like probably one of the most hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. And I probably didn't do a good job, but at the very least I was able to manage, right? Like I'm able to manage, and that's a win for me, right? Like I was able to manage. So back to the story, knowing that, my brother and I, we kind of did not have like people who would look out for us for a very long time. So we kind of had to fend for ourselves. Like we would sleep with like knives underneath our pillow. We had this thing called back to back, what we used to do, which is basically every night we used to sleep with our backs against each other. So that way we knew that no one was going to touch us from the back, right? Because we kind of had to learn our lesson after a few times of it happening. We needed to be smarter. So we decided to just defend ourselves because nothing was happening. We did complain to my stepfather, but at the time, he didn't really do anything about it, right?
Where's your sister and all this?
So my sister's not in the same madrasa, so she's in her own like place doing her own thing, right? Like my family members are all doing their own things.
With
they're
their
all
own set of problems.
with their own set of problems, right? And those are not my stories to tell, right?
Yeah.
I just want to I'm only sharing this like my own story. When it comes to that's something we used to do. Our teachers, in particular, the main teacher was a very aggressive teacher. He used to beat the heck out of us. Like, just imagine like 2 strips of like red on your skin, and then there's like your skin that's yellow in the middle, and then when you squeeze it, like blood would drip out, right? Like that's how bad we used to get beat around our whole body, basically. And most of it was not even like for a reason. Like I remember one time my teacher, he got off the phone with like his wife, and he was so pissed off, and he literally like was looking for someone to hit. And my brother and I, we sat right next to him because we were the youngest students at the time. So he just grabbed us and just started beating us for no reason, like no reason. He didn't give us a reason, just started beating us up, and he just threw us to the side. So
I've heard like I mean I've heard stories from Darul Uloom Buffalo, and like in my head, like I'm thinking what you're saying, what the experiences that you've been through are probably that to the nth level.
Yeah.
And I've heard from the stories that I've heard, like closed fist punches when someone messes up.
Yeah, all that.
Stuff like that.
All that. And they enjoyed it. Not only did they enjoy it, they believed that it was part of teaching. Like it was like, this is how you teach Islam. Like they had a divine justification for behaving this way. So that was the problem, right?
Yeah.
This is why a lot of people hate religion, is because once you give someone a divine justification for behaving, there is no limit to what atrocities you can commit in the world, right?
Yeah.
And we see the results of that hundreds of years, right? If not thousands of years of that, right? So this is just another example of it. Anywho, there's 2 stories I love to mention whenever I talk about the madrasa. Sorry, I just had that I mentioned the madrasa to give people insight to how it was, but I don't know. I've never mentioned in front of a camera, so I'm curious to see how this is gonna go. But maybe I can just mention.
We can cut it later.
Okay, so I guess I'll mention one. So without mentioning any names. Okay. So there's 2 characters that I need to introduce before I mention the story. So one of them, his name, I'm gonna mention their names. These are the only 2 people's names I'm gonna mention. So one guy, his name was Abdul Basit. Abdul Basit's from Tunisia. Abdul Basit was like a 20-something-year-old, very slim fit, like very fit guy, right? Like he could have been a model. And he basically is very big on like, standing up for people's rights. So if I want to explain, like,
you were friends with him?
Yeah, like we all kind of knew each other. We even knew like the people who molested kids, right? And we talked to them because we lived.
You were stuck in.
Yeah, we had no choice. You gotta survive. You gotta talk to people you didn't want to talk to, right? But you had to be smart with how you talk to certain people, right? So he was one of the good guys. This kid was one of the good guys. He was He, like, to better understand, like, what kind of person he is, he once told us a story about his dad. They lived in the outskirts of Tunisia, and there was some political difference that was going on, and it affected their village, and basically his dad was not giving his stance on it, so they were like, you know what, some of the community members were like, we're gonna bully him into making a stance, right? Mm-hmm. Taking a stance on the political matter. So they came, with pitchforks and stuff in front of their house, and Abdul Basit was like, I was around 14 years old, I was terrified, and, my dad just comes outside, he takes out a machete, he starts sharpening wood, and he goes to, he goes in front of the mob, right, or the group of people, and they all have, like their weapons or whatever, and he was like, why are you guys embarrassing me in front of my family. It was like, no, you had to make a stance on this. You're a community member. It's your obligation. You know what I mean? Basically, to out him if he's not a supporter, and if he's a supporter, for him to openly announce it so they can gain more traction for the political movement, right? So he basically took the woods. He's like, I don't care about any of this, but if any of you guys, step into my property, he just took the wood and just threw it on the ground, and it lodged into the ground. He's like, we're gonna have a problem. He's like, none of them messed with him. They all left.
My God.
So he had that role model as his figure, right?
That is something.
So I just want you, so that's I just want you. The reason I mentioned that so you understand what kind of person he is, because he grew up seeing someone like that.
Yeah.
So that's Abdul Basit. The next person, and whenever I mention him, a lot of people think I'm lying, but it's true. Like whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. But there's this guy, and you'll know why people don't believe it. He's Russian. His name is Muhammad Ali, and my dude is yoked, right? Like he's like huge, like he's a triangle. Now, from the perception of a 14-year-old, right? This guy was a triangle, like he was so big, and he used to tell me, he was like, I'm an ex militia or whatever.
Speaks about Bangla here?
No, so we had to learn to communicate in different ways. So eventually, you end up picking up Bangla, but most of these people, they either know English, or they know some form of Arabic, or they know some form of Bangla a little bit because they've traveled, right? But at the very least, we made the best of our hands. We're like, food, milk, right, whatever. We literally did that, and it was normal. Because these people came from, or because they were jamaats, right? They were groups. So someone who understood Bangla or whatever, English, they would translate to someone who only spoke their language. Right. So there was definitely English, there was language barriers, but through that, we were able to actually learn small phrases of all the languages. So I was able to learn a little bit of Malayo, a little bit of Thai, different languages. I wish I remember them. I wish I kept in touch with them because they would have made more story more believable when I came to New Jersey. But you kind of only learn things to survive, and once you're out, you kind of forget it. So I don't barely remember Bangla either. So a lot of people don't even believe that I lived in Bangladesh. But thank God I interacted with the Bengali community when I first came to New Jersey, because now they still remember that. They think I'm Bengali. A lot of these kids, a lot of these guys think I'm Bengali. I'm like, no, I'm Pakistani. Just speak Bangla, because a lot of Bangladeshis who speak Urdu, but you don't know a lot of Pakistani people who speak Bangla. Yeah. So. That's something. So anyway, so Muhammad Ali told me that he was ex-militia, and he had all these gun wounds bullet wounds to prove it. I didn't believe him because I remember I lived a sheltered life, not sheltered life, but I lived away from society. Yeah. So in my head, because I used to watch cartoons, if you had a bullet hole, it goes through you. There's a hole in your body, right? So I'm assuming he has holes on him, right? So he had lumps on his body. And I was like, those are not bullet holes. You just have bad acne. Later on, as an adult, I was like, oh my God, that's what a bullet hole is. You know what I mean? So, that's what a bullet hole is.
This is how anime ruins kids.
I didn't watch anime at the time.
This is how cartoons ruin kids.
I didn't watch anime at the time, right? So anyway, so this guy is hardcore, right? Yeah. Huge, and I used to make fun of him so much because he was this big guy, right? He used to sit in the tashahhud position. That's bold. You used to make fun of him? Yeah, no, because so he used to have you know what Nurani Qaida is? It's basically the little Qaida where you learn Alif Bata. So it's Ayu, Babibu, Tatitu, right? Ana, Aba, Baya. I can't believe I still remember those. Yeah. So you have that thing, and then you put in a little Qurani. He'll be this big guy, and he'll be like, Alif. So I'm reading, I'm about to start memorizing the Quran, right? So I'm advanced Arabic reciting level, right? Yeah. So I'm making fun of this guy because he's a big man, can barely speak Arabic, right? But he would laugh too, and he was I'm not even exaggerating. I wish I was exaggerating, but he literally sounded like Arnold Schwarzenegger, the way he talked,
I think once you get to certain level of bodybuilding, you
just automatically become Arnold. He was so ballsy that once he went to the teacher who had a young daughter, and he literally told the teacher, this is the head teacher who's very abusive, by the way. He went to the head teacher. He was he said it in Bangla. He was like, Ustad, when your daughter grows up, I'm going to be the man that marries her, right? So imagine, and the guy didn't say anything because he can't, because the guy's humongous. Yeah. What are you gonna do? So anyway, these two people are basically the main parts of the story. So one of the other kids, I'm not gonna mention the name, right? We'll give him randomly. We'll call him Muhammad, right? Mm-hmm. Muhammad
Who's
was
Muhammad now?
what happened? Oh dang. Okay, we'll call him Danyal. Okay. So Danyal, he was a little flamboyant.
Well, that's gonna get confusing.
Yeah. Okay, so
just say person name.
We'll call it Ali. Ali is the name. Okay, we'll call it Ali.
His last name's Ali.
It doesn't matter. So Ali is the name we're giving this kid, right? Yeah. So this kid was a little flamboyant. He was very shy and whatever. A lot of the guys used to think that he was gay. Whether that is or true, like who knows? It's not relevant. But people assume that he was gay. So he was hanging out with a Bengali kid who was very well respected in the madrasa. He was a haji, someone who committed hajj, or like performed hajj. And his dad was also very influential in the masjid because his dad was like one of the main funders of the and also a teacher or whatever. Very nice guy. His dad was a very nice guy. So this kid would be hanging around Ali, right? Ali was, I want to say 15. I want to say this kid was about 18 or 17, right? So there was a big building that was being constructed right next to our madrasa. There was 6 floors, right? No lights, no nothing. It was just a bunch of bathrooms and showers. This Bengali kid lied to Ali and told Ali that there's a store on the 6th floor where they sell snacks and drinks and stuff like that. Because, they pitch them, whatever. Like, let's go there and let's grab some drinks. So after Asr, which is usually our break time, right? My brother and I were not allowed to leave anywhere, but everyone else was. So Ali was no exception. Too young, yeah, we were too young, right? And Ali, and my stepfather requested that we didn't, so that's why we didn't, which I absolutely hate, because we didn't get to explore what other people were able to explore. We were stuck and cooped in there all day, right? For 4 years, yeah. So Ali goes upstairs, and this kid tried raping Ali, and Ali didn't know how to react. So the first thing Ali says is that let's do this tomorrow because it's about to be time for Maghrib and people are going to find out and they're going to ask where I am and you're going to get in trouble. That's the first thing he could think of, right? So Ali leaves. Ali's crying. He comes to me and he's like, Daniel, I don't know what to do. Now my brother and I, we've been there the longest when it comes to the kids. So we already knew that the teachers were not going to do anything about this. So we're like, you know what? Now it's time to hold certain people accountable. When Muhammad Ali and Abdul Basit found out about this stuff happening, they literally came to us and they were like, the next time this happens, let us know. We'll take care of it. So I'm like, okay, this is your time to shine.
How old were those two?
I think Muhammad Ali was in his mid-30s and Abdul Basit was in mid-20s. So he was probably like 23 or something like that, right? Yeah. So they told Abdul, and this is where I think Ali messed up. They told Ali to call the kid the next day and to tell him to go to the same place where they were last night, like the last day, and that they were going to take care of everything. Where Ali messed up was Ali went in front of the whole...
Oh, so they were going to wait?
They were going to wait there, right?
Okay.
So Ali basically went during lunchtime in the local, like the Bengali cafeteria where there's hundreds of witnesses, right? And whenever a foreigner walks in, everyone looks, because he's clearly a foreigner, right? He's from Philippines, very light skin, right? Like everyone's looking at what's a foreigner doing here? So he goes right next to this Bengali kid, he whispers in the ear, and he leaves, right? So everyone saw that. Now keep that in mind, right? So this kid, he goes upstairs, on the floor waiting for whatever, Ali to be there. And Muhammad Ali and Abdul Basit, they were hiding. So they literally just messed him up. Like they told us the story after. Abdul Basit jumped from the top of the floor and slapped his ears in the. No, Muhammad Ali did that because apparently he's trained because he's militia, right? So he knows how to decapitate someone. Yeah. So he basically
real quick. I thought I heard something. It might.
Damn it, man.
It's good.
No, we're good.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. So he's on the top of the stairs. He jumps down. He busts his eardrums, right? And then Abdul Basit just pummels him. So they both basically pummeled him, right?
Did he get hospitalized after?
Yeah, he got hospitalized.
Wait,
he got hospitalized.
You said this guy's dad was a nice guy?
Yeah, his dad was a nice guy, but he was influential. That's the important thing. Him being a nice guy is irrelevant. Yeah. Him being influential is important, right, for the story. So
the dad was not influential. He was just
but he was also well known too because he was a haji and he's a son of whatever, right?
He's only 18.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. So like, just think about it. The rich kid of a school, right? For example, you know what I mean? Like, if their parents are well known, they're thinking they're the ish. They're gonna treat everyone like, they're gonna really think that they're the hot stuff. This kid was just like that, right? So he thought he could get away with this, and he couldn't, because usually teachers won't do anything, because again, right? Like, what are you gonna do? These allegations happen all the time, but unfortunately they never address it. So in this case, I don't know if they address it now, but back then they didn't. So Muhammad Ali and Abdul Basit knew that, and they were like, we're going to take care of this, like, because this shouldn't happen. Like, and they explained later why they did it. But they basically sent him to the hospital, and he had to get plastic surgery done to, like, fix up his face completely. He was out of commission for a year, basically. He was gone. He was gone, like gone, right?
Wait, what happened to the guy? What happened to Abdul Basit and Muhammad
So
Ali?
we're getting there. So I'm waiting. My brother and I are eagerly waiting, right? Because we're like, what's going on? It's after Maghrib. Everyone should be here, right? The teacher's worried. It's like, where are these two kids? These two guys come, like, they're wearing white shalwar kameezes, right?
Oh, Lord.
Blood everywhere. They're, like, high-fiving each other, joking around, laughing, having a time of their life, right? Like, I'm sure they had a lot of pent-up aggression that they wanted to take out, so they did. So these guys, the teacher automatically know that something happened, we need to address it. Took them into the room, figured out what was going on. There was a bunch of shouting going on, right? It became like a whole conspiracy, like a whole problem. Like, the whole madrasa got involved. And because they're foreign kids, right, and there's, like, some legal stuff that comes with that, they couldn't necessarily deport them or send them away because there was, like, some contract with the government or whatever. I don't know how to explain it. I don't actually know the details. But what I remember is that they were limited to how they can punish them. The only way they could punish them is through physical punishment, right? Because the teacher wanted them to get imprisoned. The father wanted them to get imprisoned, beat up and then imprisoned.
Wait, the father of the
father of the kid, right? The Bengali kid. Okay. He didn't believe the allegations. He was like, my son would never do that. You know what I mean? These two are adults. They destroyed my son. They need to go to prison. But they couldn't do that because it's gonna bring up a lot of other problems, right? That they swept under the rug. So they were like, you know what? We're gonna give them the ultimate punishment. So the ultimate punishment is basically that if you do something that's really bad, all your teachers, so in some cases up to 12 to 20 teachers, they get together and they sit in a circle. You get tied up and you get blindfolded, and they all take turns beating you up for like a few hours. And it's just the most horrible thing ever. And I've actually seen someone go through that, and just hearing a grown man like cry like a baby is like a whole nother, like, I will never forget how that guy sounded, right? So anywho, they were like, we're going to do that with Abdul Basit and Muhammad Ali. So Muhammad Ali and Abdul Basit, they started laughing. Like, they're like, Ustad Abdurrahim, us. I wasn't going to mention names. So the Ustad, right? The Ustad, the teacher, the big teacher, he basically was like, you know what? I'm going, like, you guys are in a heap of mess, we're going to beat you up, da-da-da-da-da. And they both start laughing, right? And Abdul Basit was like, Abdul Basit basically, he knew that some of the teachers were molesters too. So he kind of said it out loud. He was like, as long as I live, if I hear that someone is performing any kind of zulm, which injustice, to anyone, like any kind of oppression, I will take care of it, because that's what the Prophet told us to do. I don't care if I die as a consequence. So he's like, so you can do whatever you want. So then Abdul Basit's kind of like soft-spoken, right? So he didn't really intimidate the teacher. So the teacher has a stick in his hand, right? He's pretending to be like, serious. Like, he's like going like that, or like biting his lip, trying to be all like macho. Like, such a coward. Anyway, he's like, you know what? You guys are going to suffer the ultimate punishment. He was like, are you ready for that? And so I don't know if you guys know like how a madrasa sitting is, but everyone sits on the floor and there's a long bench with like books on it, right? So Abdul Basit just leans forward, right? My dude's hand is bigger than like my entire existence. Like, he just takes his shoulder, puts it on top of the on the what's that called, right? On the table, and he leans towards the teacher, and he just puts his hand over here. He takes the stick out of the teacher's hand, and he just like, like not takes it, but like guides it, and he puts it on his hand. And he just taps it a few times, right? And all he says is "garo," and he starts laughing, just says "garo." The teacher didn't do anything. The teacher just nervously laughed.
Where's Scarmy?
Do it.
Do. Yeah, okay.
But you couldn't. What are you gonna do? These guys are not afraid to get hurt, and you can't even hurt them. They're like Abdul Basit maybe, but Muhammad Ali is huge. You're not gonna beat him. What are you gonna do? He's gonna laugh while you hit him, which has happened. You know, like the teacher has like jokingly hit him, but he's like actually tried, and Muhammad Ali laughs. He's like, "Oh, it feels like a massage." So like, you know, like that's one story I tell people. It's like that's what I experienced.
They just ended up.
So they definitely punished them, but it didn't hurt. Obviously, they were completely fine.
But like going forward, anytime you guys had issues with those type of people, did they take care?
After that moment, we never experienced it.
Yeah, sure.
None of the kids experienced it.
That's impossible. Have you had contact with them?
I used to when I first lived in New Jersey, but my mom. We were like moving around a lot when we first came to New Jersey trying to figure ourselves out. My mom had like an old Nokia phone with everyone's numbers and it just shut down and she wasn't able to turn it on again. And it had everyone's numbers. So I've lost touch. And one of my biggest regrets is not keeping in touch with these people. Because I didn't have any devices. There was no way for me to capture those numbers. And
no, for like you just know from hearing, like I know a story is like a forced perspective and type of thing, but just like hearing that it's obvious that they have like hearts of gold and like
some of these people are genuine, amazing people, and I wish that I was still in contact with them. Like it hurts me. I don't even know if they're alive. I don't know what's going on. Most of these people are from Philippines. They live in the village. You know, when the whole tsunami and hurricane happened, I don't even know if they're alive after that because it hit where they're from.
And you could probably never get in touch with them.
I have no way of getting in touch. I don't know. Like the only way that I can get in touch with them, which is the absolute last way I want to, is I call those teachers and I go back. And I'm sorry to say, I'm not strong enough to do that yet. Yeah. Like I eventually want to, but I still have nightmares of waking up in that madrasa and dealing with the things I've dealt with. It's like legit PTSD, right? And I really had to process that and take time to go over that. But I still have those nightmares. Like 10 years later, I still feel like, you know, I still. Right. It still like haunts me, right?
It was 4 years of your life.
Yeah, it was 4 years of my life, and it was like extremely traumatizing. So so the second story that I usually tell people, it basically explains like the gangness, right? Mm-hmm. There was this one guy who was a Filipino kid. We'll call him Ali too for the story. He stole everyone's stuff and he ran away. Basically, like he got into a few trunks. Took a bunch of money, took someone's phone. Like, we're not allowed to have devices, so if someone had a secret phone, he took it and he ran, right?
I thought the doors were...
So like, he found a way. He found a way and he left, right? Basically what he did was, in the bathroom, we had a small lock and a small gate. That gate, like outside, took us to the state park. The Dhaka State Park was right next to an airport. So he was trying to escape just to live his life, right? He wasn't planning on going back home. He was trying to live his life. So what he did was he learned how to pick a lock from one of the Chinese students. It was really cool. Like, we all learned how to do it. It was so awesome. Basically,
can you still do it?
Yeah, we can still do it. So basically what it is, it's not picking a lock, but the side of a lock, right? At least those kinds of locks, they have like little things,
right?
You
have to get the things.
So you had to get them, right? So what we were taught was to take anything, a knife, whatever, scrape the metal from the side until you see those things, and you can break them by just hitting them with a certain amount of force, right? So we learned how to break locks, and these are Bangladesh kind of mass-produced these kinds of certain kinds of locks, right? They're like basically like the locks that you put on your luggage, right?
Small
ones, right?
Small
ones, but also a little bit bigger ones too, but not the big heavy duty ones. So we learned how to do that with these small ones. So we had a medium-sized lock on there, which he took its time. It took him a month to scratch all the way till he got to the point. Because keep in mind, he had to do it during his bathroom breaks and while everyone was sleeping, right? Just go all night, scrape until he found the parts, and then he had to break it, which took time too. As soon as he break it, remember, after us, sir, we saw him leave. Like, we talked to him while he was leaving because I didn't think he would survive. I was like, you're an idiot. He was like, watch, I'm going to be enjoying my life while you're stuck here. I was like, that's true. So basically...
So I'm kind of confused. It's a padlock to...
there was a window in the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
The window took you outside. Now, we're on the 6th floor, but there's a big pipe with, like, grooves, right? So he basically climbed down the pipe until he got into one of the public bathrooms in the other floors. So the 6th floor, remember I told you, is just a small room. Then there's 5 big floors.
Oh, so he broke the padlock to get into the pipe.
So no. So he broke the padlock to open the window.
Yeah.
He got out of the window, right? Now he's outside the building on the side, right?
On the 6th floor.
On the 6th floor. There's a huge pipe that goes all the way down the building, right? He climbed on the pipe down to 2 floors down to the nearest public bathroom where the window, like where the other bathrooms were, right? Where like the others, like not the student bathrooms, now the Tablighi Jamaati bathrooms, which were open, allows you to go directly outside, right? All the student bathrooms are locked. So he was able to climb down the pipe, not in the pipe, but outside of it, right? Through the grooves,
And the windows just open normally? Because they're not locked.
So the normal bathrooms are not locked. They're actually open. It's completely like windowless. It's just open, right? So like if you're driving through that highway or that main road, you can actually see people showering in there. It's actually pretty cool. So like because we all shower like with buckets outside, right?
So this guy, he had to spend a month doing like picking the lock.
Yeah.
He had to climb down. I imagine it was unsafe.
Yeah, it was not safe at all. If he fell, he would have died. 6 floors.
6 floors up, yeah.
He had to do that. And
he had to steal the money, too.
He stole the money from everyone. He created a lot of enemies by doing that, by the way.
I would imagine.
And then he disappeared. So he was gone for 2 months. No one knew what happened to him. We all just assumed that he was just living his life, right? My dude comes back extremely, like, battered up one day. I was like, whoa, Ali's back, yo. Like, that's crazy, right? Like, I remember when he left, I completely forgot he existed, right? Because it was sometime, not 2 years and 2 months, a lot longer, but it was definitely enough time where you just forget about him, right? You're like, he's gone, he's living his life, he's enjoying his life. But here's the thing, he stole money from people. And he stole money from people that were the opposite side of the gang, right? Like the other gang. So
when did he come back?
So what happened was he was traveling with a group of people. And he was pretending to be something he's not. I'm not going to mention what kinds of people they are, but in Bangladesh and Pakistan, there's certain groups of people that tend to just go around making dua for people, and they identify as a certain kind of, whatever. I don't know if you guys are catching my drift, but basically, we'll just call them like. We'll just call it like. I don't want to like discriminate or anything like that. So we're gonna use basically just imagine a bunch of like gypsies, right? We're just gonna use that word, gypsies, right? Yeah. So there are like a bunch of gypsies that travel around. So he pretended to be a gypsy too,
so
right?
We'll clarify after, but yeah.
Yeah. So he pretended to be a gypsy, and he kind of got caught, and they ganged up on him, right? So they beat him up, took all of his belongings, and they left. Okay. So he had nowhere to go, no money, no nothing. The only place he could come back to was here, where the teacher had his money and his stuff, his passport and everything, because the teacher keeps all that, right, in his lock. So,
just to clarify what he was, I think I have an idea. If necessary, we can end up bleeping out anything. Yeah, but like, do you mean like he was like those people that I think there's a problem in India and Pakistan where they like fake being saints.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's like, what I thought.
No, so he wasn't pretending to be a saint. He was pretending to be transgendered. So in Pakistan and Bangladesh, there's a group of people who. They're not necessarily men, they're transgender who dress like women, right? And basically they're like, some people in our countries believe that if they make dua for you, it's granted, right? So they just walk around in groups, and actually people do believe in this stuff. So it's very interesting. But I was kind of hesitating to mention that because I don't want to come off as like whatever, right? Like it's just a reality, of the story. So anyway, so he was pretending to be one of them. Then they realized he wasn't, so they beat him up.
So he was dressing as...
He was dressing like a woman and walking around with a bunch of guys that did the same thing. Or not a bunch of guys, but a bunch of people, right? Who were doing the same thing.
So how did he get caught?
I don't know the details.
What entails getting caught if they're all pretending?
Well, they're not pretending. They identify as something, right? Like people with maybe multiple sexual organs, right? Mm-hmm. Like stuff like that. So it's like I don't know what that term is. Like what are you if you're that? Like it's not. I don't think it's transgender. It's something else, right? But I don't want to like get into that. It's like just a whole other thing. But it's irrelevant for the story. He was hanging out with those people. He ended up getting caught. He got beaten up. All of his stuff was stolen, and he basically had to come back. So it was after Fajr. The teacher's sleeping. We're all memorizing Quran, right? We're all like going back and forth, memorizing Quran, right? And one of the kids that he stole from, one of the guys, got up. Till today, I can't explain what happened next, but all I know is that we all knew what to do. Because it never happened before, but we all still knew what to do. As soon as he got up, the other kid got up. The kid, Ali, who stole. He got up because he knew it was coming. He had to pay his dues. He stole from someone. He needed to suffer the consequences for it. No one was going to save him. Not his gang, not his group of like students, not the teachers. No, the teachers were both, by the way, knocked out, right? Like one of them was not there. The other one, the mean one, was knocked out. So as soon as both of them get up, we all start reading louder. Like louder to the point where we can drown out what's about to happen, right? We're all like louder, going. And then they get into the middle of the classroom, they punch each other like anything. It was like boom, 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 so quick, right? Blood just squirts out of this kid's face, right? Ali's face.
They fight each other, he punches him.
Ali tries to defend himself, but this guy was obviously like Ali's also beaten up from before, you know what I mean? So this is literally a day after he comes back, because he came back in the evening, and this is the first time that they had alone time. Not really alone time, but teachers knocked out, right? So only time. So this guy beats Ali up. Ali tries to defend himself. He's not able to. Blood squirts on the floor. Teacher wakes up after hearing the thud noises, right? Because Ali like stumbles and falls. And then the other kid quickly goes and sits down, and he starts reading Quran like nothing happened. So the teacher wakes up, all he sees, everyone is reading out loud. Ali is on the floor and there's blood on the ground. He's like, Ali, what happened, right? And Ali gets up, starts cussing him out in Filipino, but he's not admitting to what happened. He's like, what happened? He's like, I fell. And he sat down, started reading Quran, right? No one snitched. He got so mad. He's like, what's going on? He's asking everyone. No one's announcing. My brother and I are obviously not going to snitch. We're like, no, nothing happened. You just tripped. Yeah. Didn't you hear him? Right? And you know what's so funny is literally like 2 days later, those two guys were just chilling, having a great time. Because the guy who stole from, the guy who beat him up. Yeah. Because they handled their business. Like that's the kind of lifestyle we live. Like, like people who got molested and the molesters, we hung out. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to explain it, right? But it's just like that was our reality, right? Mm-hmm. For 4 years. But I wouldn't lie if there weren't times that I wanted to take my knife out of the pillow and just like consider ending it because because it's survival. But at that time, that's not the smartest move. You want to survive. You don't want to end up putting yourself in a worse situation, especially if no one believes you. Right. So those are the two stories I basically I mention to everyone when I talk about my time there. Mm-hmm. So I spent 4 years there.
Is there anything you want to take out?
I don't know.
We can discuss that after.
Yeah, So I'm sorry if any of that was uncomfortable, by the way.
Dude, I'm so
and I'm sorry if that took a lot of time too.
I'm so interested. Like that was really. Yeah, so I understand why no one believes you because if I wasn't familiar with your character before, like how we talked off the podcast, and we just met the first time you said this, I'd be like, shut the hell up right now. Yeah. This did not happen.
And this is not even this is the thing. It's not even the worst that's happened, right? So like and a lot of things just like they just work out. That's like if I ever wrote a book, the theme would be how things just work out. Like qadar, right? Like it's such a beautiful thing. Because there's no way to explain.
Qadar for non-Muslim viewers is just like the power of Allah to like things just happen because Allah wills them.
There's no way to explain how I'm here today talking to you.
That's the thing, yeah.
And I went through those things, right? And that's why a lot of people didn't believe me, and people still continue not to, and it's completely fine because I don't need to prove myself to anyone, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's my life. So anyway, back to the thing.
Just a side story. Half your lifetime ago, you were in that situation, basically in prison as a child, right? Yeah. What I'm assuming you do. Like sometimes you just stop and think, right? What goes through your mind that you're here now, sitting on a couch talking about this on our podcast? Like what's running through your head just thinking about that?
So, you know how, like, in the beginning of 2020, there was, like, a 10-year challenge thing going on? Mm-hmm. I didn't post anything for the 10-year challenge, mm-hmm. but 10 years ago, I came to New Jersey. 10 years ago, so the madrasa, 4 years I left. 4 years was over. My mom finally had enough of what things were going on between my stepfather. Decided enough's enough. She packed her stuff. With the only money that she had left, she used it to buy us tickets. And we left. We came to New Jersey. We had nothing going for us.
Did you have family here?
Yeah. So my mom's sister lives here. She's her son's actually very well known in the Muslim community. But they've been established in New Jersey for a while. So they were kind enough to welcome us to their home, and I will be forever grateful. Like if there's anyone in my entire family who I get along with very well, it's actually my mom's older sister and her husband. Like I consider my khalu and my khalami. My khalu is like I don't know if I've ever admitted it to him, but he's like a father figure to me. He's the closest thing to a father figure I've ever had, and like I genuinely like when I see him play with my son, I have genuine like pride and honor for that, right? And my khalami, who's so like it's very funny. So my mom's a very like semi chaotic in the positive sense. Like she's very like people love her. She loves to like party in the way, but she's a niqabi and everything. But she's like if you hang out with her, you'll have a great time, right? As a person, a lot of young women have definitely benefited from her presence, right? But I'm nothing like my mom. I'm actually very similar to my mom's older sister. Like I'm more analytical. I'm more reserved, right? So I've definitely benefited from my aunt's wisdom and my uncle's support too. Like these are just two people who like continuously, like I'm just like grateful that they're in my life. So they welcomed us to their home. We stayed there for about 6 months trying to figure things out. Around this time, my mom was trying to get me into the Islamic school I was telling you about, and the things that happened there, right? Where my story got out in the community because some teacher told their son, and you know what the teacher told his son? Like, you're lucky you didn't go through what Danyal went through. Like, imagine what he's gone through and he's working hard. You know what I mean? You should be more grateful.
And that's how it started. That, man. It's always
and that was it. That was it. And this kid didn't privately come to me. He goes in front of everyone in class and he says it.
Wait, how old are you?
We were kids, that's what I mentioned to you, right? Remember I told you that I got bullied when I first came to New Jersey. How am I going to blame these kids? They don't know. They don't understand what these things are. When you tell even a remote of anything, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they're not going to get it. Some people are going to think this is weird. This is, it literally sounds like it came from a movie. So obviously people are going to think that I was lying.
You can't write this.
Yeah, so I was just like...
No, the thing is, you can only write this.
Yeah, like, it's like...
Not, for people...
No, I was like, yeah.
People cannot experience this. Like, there's no way... They can experience this unless it comes from, like, a movie or something.
Exactly.
So, I agree with that. I don't blame the kids, but... Why, man? I know. From the stories that teachers think.
I know. But this is why Islamic schools in general should be investing in actual teachers and not parents, you know?
That's the thing. Like, not, like, obviously, like, I know you don't like this, but, like, obviously the stuff I've gone through is not the same as yours. But, like, I've had experiences, like, not my stories, but, like, other stories. Like, I used to think that it is a good thing, and on some level it is. Like, the Islamic schools are more like family. Like, I can go to my teacher and talk informally and just like chill and be like, oh yeah, yo, what's up? And it'll be a nice conversation, right? And they're close and we can be informal with each other. But with that, on the flip side is a lot of stuff is very unprofessional. Like you cannot say things and expect there to be a certain level of professional.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? Like, I know that a lot of Muslim organizations strive to have that like family dynamic.
Yeah.
But it comes with it. Yeah, there's pros to that, but there's also cons. Are those cons worth it? In my opinion, not.
Yeah.
In my opinion, not. I feel like you can definitely be a strong team, a strong unit, and be semi personal. That's completely fine. Be vulnerable. Sure, it's great, right? That you have that level of trust. But in terms of the consequences, those should not be relaxed. There should be levels of professionalism to avoid, to prevent sexual harassment, right, to prevent discrimination, to prevent all the other kinds of isms that are bad, right? And that's why it's important not to, get too comfortable. And that's, it's only to be, it's only for our benefit. Right. It's not for anything else. It's not to make life hard for anyone. But anyway, so I do want to put this up close so we can have other fruitful conversations. But basically, great, I came to New Jersey in 2010. I was a 15-year-old kid who did not know how to multiply or divide. I knew how to read. My siblings were illiterate, right? They did not know anything, and they had a lot harder than I did. And how did I catch up? So, like I mentioned, I'm 25 and I graduated on time with everything. How did I do that?
That's what I was about to ask.
Do the math, right?
Real quick, can you check on that? Oh. Defeated the purpose of making a waveform. Alright, ready? Alright.
Yeah. Awesome. So, how I caught up. So 2010, I came to New Jersey, right? Still trying to figure out myself. Now, here's the thing. I have not been in a professional school environment for over 8 years. So I don't know what the ranking and societal ranking is and stuff like that. I was told that because I was 15, I should have been in 9th grade, right? Mm-hmm. In my head, I'm like, I'll be thankful if I'm in 3rd grade, right? Because in my head, remember, I'm used to being around people older than me, even in the madrasa. So I'm thinking, it's not embarrassing if I'm around a bunch of kids, because I'm thinking I should be in a class based off of my academic level, not in terms of my age. Yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, no. So exactly, I didn't know that. So when I went to Islamic school, so I remember this. I remember we interviewed with them, right? And they were like, sure, we'll give you like a discount for a year, right? So we came in the middle of the school year. So I remember this like it was yesterday. The vice principal, he takes me, and he's like talking to me, and I was supposed to take a placement exam, and based on the placement exam, they were going to determine what my academic level was going to be, and then they were going to tutor me based off of like to give me some extra class or whatever. Like awesome. I never took a test. The guy literally walks me to the hallway, and then he's like, "So how old are you?" I was like, "I'm 15." He's like, "Oh, okay." And then he looks at this kid. I'm sure you guys know him. You know Tosif?
Yeah.
Tosif Alam?
Yeah. Just went to Chicago recently.
Yeah, Tosif Alam's a good friend of mine. So Tosif Alam was in trouble. Sorry, Tosif. So Tosif Alam was outside the class, right? And he's just chilling there, right? And Tosif was tall for his age, and I was short. So I'm Tosif's height, right? No, Tosif's actually taller than me. So Tosif, I remember he literally looked at Tosif. I saw his eyes. He looked at Tosif and he looked at me. Then he looks at Tosif. He's like, Tosif, what grade are you in? He's like, brother, I'm in 7th grade. He was like, Danyal, I think you're supposed to be in 7th grade. Now my uneducated self, I'm like, my uneducated self was like, oh, I'm skipping like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. This is awesome. I'm already on a good start. So I'm happy, right? I didn't realize that this is bad.
I'm like laughing because I don't know how to. I feel like I'm infuriated, but I'm just laughing at how oh my god! I thought.
So I ended up going to 7th grade, and while the kids were learning like pre-algebra and whatever, right? I was in the corner getting sheet handouts, right, that were on my level. But here's the thing. For some of my classes, they didn't even teach me anything. Like, they just gave me handouts on things I already knew. Right. So the year passed, and I looked at my grades. I thought I was going to fail. I got all A's. It's like, why did I get all A's? Then everything made sense when I found out that the teachers knew my story. So basically what ended up happening was that the teachers were trying to be considerate of the fact that I've experienced a traumatized life, that they were worried that if they kind of showed me the harsh realities of grades or whatever, well, this is what I've been told. I don't know how true it is. But basically, they all agreed by a few people. Like, I don't want to out anyone. But I basically found out that they didn't take me seriously. Okay. They weren't challenging me. Some were. I'm not saying that all of them were like that. But majority of them, they weren't. Because there's no way that I got an A's for 7th grade level when I'm 3rd grade level math and English and everything. There's absolutely no way. So I left the school. And I didn't leave the school because of the fact that they did that. I actually loved the school. I loved the teachers. I loved everything about it. I wanted to stay there. But that's when another school opened up. I'm not going to mention the name, but you guys know what they are. Like we talked off camera. I'm not gonna mention the name because I don't want to expose anyone.
We're already on this school.
So there's another school. There was another school that I moved to, and then this new school
opened up recently.
Yeah, so this new school opened up recently, right? And
okay.
And they were looking for like new kids, like like anyone who they can get, anyone under their mama, right? And like this, like if you know anything about the school, there was a lot of challenges that they faced due to the fact that they just didn't have a certain criteria, whatever. So
is it like a specific criteria or just like several things?
There's so many ways. Like parents were teachers, people weren't getting paid, students were not taken seriously. A lot of delinquents came to the school because it was like, you didn't have to pay for tuition if your parent was a teacher. It was very weird, right? But it was needed because a lot of the Islamic schools were very like alpha, like they were trying to cater to a higher paid demographic. Right. This school was addressing the needs of community members who couldn't afford Islamic school. So for the demographic, it was what was needed. We didn't have a choice, and people had a lot worse than I did that were there. So that's one thing I really liked, is that my story was not like, oh my God, you went through that? It's like, yeah, I kind of went through something similar. Like that's what I would hear, right? And the principal wasn't like, what? Oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. He's like, well, you know what? It's time to work hard so you can catch up. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how he was, because he went through a lot of stuff too himself. Did you appreciate that? I really did. I feel like I didn't need someone like feeling bad for me. Yeah. I came to, and like I said, my first year in the United States, like back in the United States, was very difficult. I was severely depressed. I was going through so much. I was just like, I lost hope in myself. I was like, now what? You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to thrive in this world? Like, I have no education. I come from a poor family, right? Like, I'm the oldest son. My mom is single. Like, what am I going to do? I had all this pressure, and I was terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do. But Allah subhanahu works in mysterious ways that till now I cannot even comprehend, and my stories don't make sense because they can't comprehend it, right? But it's just a reality. So what happened is that before I went to the school, this is what the principal said. The principal, like what their board basically, or their team said that we will actually give them a placement exam. Based off of that, we'll put them in where they belong. So like Danyal, he's supposed to be in 10th grade now. What I think we can do for him is put him in 9th grade, maybe even 10th grade based off of how he scores, right? I took the placement exam. They told me that I should be good for 9th grade. I don't believe that. I think they didn't even review my exam. It was just a formality.
Hope, and then the hope.
I still don't. There's no way I placed 9th grade. Trust me, there's no way I placed 9th grade, right?
It doesn't make sense. You missed like half.
I don't know how to divide.
Right.
Forget about algebra. Yeah. I don't know how to divide. I barely know how to multiply 2 digits. You know what I mean? Like I was still on a single digit multiplication, right? The only 2-digit multiplication I could do was 10 because of the 0. You know, like, so I didn't learn anything, you know? Yeah. So, anywho, I remember the first day of school. So, elementary to high school were all there, right? It's the first day of school. It's a new building for them and everything. So, systems are new, by the way. I didn't think about any of this. By the way, everything I'm about to mention, I did it out of impulse. Mm-hmm. Didn't think, didn't scheme, nothing, right? I just did it and it worked out. We all walk into the main floor, right? Mm-hmm. And they're telling everyone to line up in their grades. So I stand in the 9th grader section because I remember them telling me that they're going to place me into 9th grade. But when they're doing the roll call, I hear my name in the 8th grade class. Then I realized, oh my God, the exam was just a formality. They were just going to put me in 8th grade because I just came from 7th grade. They didn't actually look at my grades. I was like, no, they told me I was going to be in 9th grade or at maybe even 10th grade. Let me just see what happens, right? And I'm not so I stayed in the line. So then when it was time for 9th grade and we all went to the classroom, the homeroom teacher is putting doing roll call, whatever, attendance. And he's like, who are you? I was like, I'm Danyal. I was like, your name is not on my roster. I was like, oh, I just took a placement exam. Maybe my name is on the system. So okay, come with me. He takes me to the front desk lady. I'm like, oh my God, it's over. I'm going to get expelled. I'm going to have to go back to madrasa.
I just like to interject one thing.
Wait, your mic's over there, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I just want to interject one thing. You have gone from fearing for your life, right? In a prison-like gang system to now being worried about getting caught. How your grade? How? I don't know. So I'm just like, I feel like after you've been through that, you don't give a damn.
No.
Yeah, I thought you were about to. I thought you were about to.
I was terrified.
They're like, we're gonna explain. You're like, go to.
No, man, it was a whole new world for me. You know what I mean? Like in any other madrasa, I would have been like a cocky guy. Like, like do your worst. Like I've seen the worst. But in this world, it was all new, and I wanted to serve. I wanted to do something. Like I needed to survive. Because the alternative was not so pretty, right? Which I did consider. So I didn't want to go down that route. It was a very dark time for me. Like just putting it lightly, it was a very dark time. My mom still has drawings of what I used to draw back then in the day. I'm like, I get terrified of seeing what I used to produce because I enjoy art as a hobby. So I express myself through my art because I didn't really talk a lot. So it was a very dark time. So I really needed this for myself. This was important for me. This was going to be my savior, which was something to look forward to. So and I subconsciously knew that. I didn't know that I wasn't actively pursuing it, but it was like my body was just instinctively doing that because it knew it needed to survive that way, or maybe in my mind, God knows what, right? So, so the teacher goes to the front desk, and literally this is what he says, and I love him for it, right? Because at this time I was happy he was a teacher, he was a parent, and not an actual teacher, because he was like, this kid is not on my roster, add him to my roster. That's it. He didn't question it, right? And because they were such a new system, the girl was like, what's your name, honey? Okay, he's on. That's it. No background question, nothing. So I skipped 1 year that way. Now, academically, I'm only 1 year behind, right? Yeah. This is where, So how they used to teach some of our classes was 9th and 10th grade together and 11th and 12th grade together. Yeah. The principal's son at the time was in the school, and the principal created and now that I'm saying this, people who are from that school are going to know what school this is because they're going to know for this specific program. So they created a particular program for people who wanted to graduate early with a 4-year diploma. So if you want to graduate from high school early, yeah. So when you want to graduate early, you usually take a GED, right? You take the GED exam and then you get a GED, which means that you can go to college with that. It's an equivalent.
We have a friend that did this. So just in case you didn't know what school it was.
Wait, he did that?
Yeah, but let's not talk. Okay, we don't want to give it. We don't want to name and shame.
So basically, you can be in real life. What you can do is that if you want to graduate school early for whatever reason, right? You think you're done, whatever. There's a certain you need to take a certain level of classes, yes, but then you need to take the GED exam. Yeah. When you take the GED exam, that becomes a replacement for you to get into college. Not every college takes it, but some do. Community colleges most of the time take it. No, I don't think Rutgers takes it. I'm not sure. But I know that Middlesex takes it. So. So in this school, what they do is they don't even let you take the GED. They give you a 4-year diploma. Like you graduated 4 years of high school in 3 years. But they have requirements. So the requirements were that, from the top of my mind, I don't remember the details, but it was basically you needed to have a certain average GPA. You needed to memorize the Quran. You needed to take a few classes from college. Like I'm not talking about AP classes, like going to college and actually taking them, and you needed to have a certain SAT score. For public school standards, it wasn't that high. But for this Islamic school with a bunch of delinquents, it was incredibly high. It was nearly impossible for you to get that.
Well, you need to be Hafiz to get this.
You need to be Hafiz to get this, right? So it was nearly impossible for a lot of these kids. Thankfully for me, I memorized 15 juz in Bangladesh, so I only had 15 juz left. And this Islamic school was not very strict on the madrasa, the Quranic studies. Like they were in the beginning of the school, so they were very pushy about just quickly memorize. Don't need a review. Yeah. So because of that, you end up forgetting. So I used to tell the teacher, I cannot do that. I need to memorize the last 15 because I'm gonna forget them. But he was like, no. You have enough years to stay in the school. You're going to remember it anyways. So yeah, that's one thing that happened, right? So anywho, he created that program specifically for his sons who all graduated early.
Oh, so just to clarify, is that how they did they want to kind of pump out Hufaz?
They wanted to pump out Hufaz to showcase it to other people so they can be like, oh my God, there's this many Hufaz, right?
Is this? I don't know if you have to edit this. Is this allowed? Like legally allowed? Because you said
it's a private school, so there's a lot more they can get away with.
Yeah. But they give you a 4-year diploma even though you only spent 3 years.
Yeah, so as long as you meet the legal requirements, which in this case you do, you take extra math classes, extra English classes, extra science classes, right? You kind of make up
after school or
and whatever way you do, you just need to show proof on how you did it, right?
Oh, so you took the classes.
You just crammed it up in 3 years, right? But then there's other things, and then they'll let you. So that's what they required you to do. That's why you had to take the college classes. Yeah. So I heard about this from the student who was the son of the principal, and I was like, do you think I can do that too? Because I told him, I was like, if I do that, I'll graduate on time. Like, I'll be in college.
You're caught up.
I'll be caught up. And I was like, I never would imagine, no way. That would be amazing. So he was like, you can. You just got to do the things. But he's like, I don't think you'll be able to. I was like, we'll see. So I remember the first year. Now I'm in 9th grade, right? I lied. I'm in 9th grade, and I barely know anything. And I remember that they were splitting us up to algebra and pre-algebra classes. And I went to the pre-algebra teacher. She was this Singaporean lady. And I remember I went to her in the corner, and I just started crying. And I was like, sister, I lied, and I got into this class. Please don't tell on me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going through so much. It was just a mess.
Those are genuine, it just came out.
Yeah, it all came out. I just started crying. And she was just like, she just calmed me down. She heard my story. She started crying. And she was like, Danyal, this is what we're going to do. You and I are going to take pre-algebra together. Because that's the lowest class that you can take in the school, 4-year grade. But every day after class, for 1 hour, you're going to sit with me. And we're going to go over preliminary steps that you need to take for the equations that you're going through in pre-algebra. So for example, if I required fractions, we were going to review fractions beforehand so I can have it fresh in my head. Basically, like, in college when you take a class, you just take it to remember your assignment, and then you forget after the class is over.
And she spent an hour with you.
She spent an hour every single day.
Amazing.
Not only did she do that, but she also spoke to a few other my teachers, and they did the same thing for me. So my science teacher did the same thing. My English teacher, who was like a very close friend of my mom's now, did the same thing for me.
One-on-one?
Just one-on-one. We spent so much time together just learning. At the same time, alhamdulillah, my mom was able to fork up some money, and we went to tutoring after class, and Khan Academy was my best friend.
Oh my God.
This is before it blew up. It was this is around 2011 time, right, when it was fairly new, and he was the only instructor, right, and it only had high school level classes.
Back in the old days.
Yeah, back in the old days, right. Now it's like a whole and there's like instructors and badges and a whole thing, right? So
Are you still in touch with those teachers?
Yeah, I won't.
I can only imagine how much.
Some of them,
yeah.
and about some of them, like I still am to a certain degree, not as much as I would like to, but I have genuine appreciation for who they are. I'm not in touch with the Singaporean sister, unfortunately. She left that year, after that year. But the other ones who were there throughout them, I'm still in touch with them. Yeah. So.
And I just have to ask this.
Yeah.
Did they know your story, or
So eventually all of them found out.
Okay.
Not everything, but majority of it.
But they mostly did it because they wanted to help you, genuinely help you.
No, they knew I struggled. I told them, but yeah, they didn't do it because they were getting paid or anything. None of them got paid. None of them got paid. They all did it out of the kindness of their heart.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So they and that's something I really appreciate. So that's something I would do, right? And I really had to study hard to catch up. And I remember, okay, so then the kid graduated, right? The principal's son graduated that year. The next year, I go to the principal. I was like, I want to do this, right? So now I'm in 10th grade, right? Alhamdulillah, I graduated 9th grade with really high scores because I worked my butt off.
Are you caught up now, though?
No, I'm still behind. I'm challenged. I'm struggling with a lot of things. Also, you got to keep in mind, the Islamic school standards were also very low, too. Right. So I was I made it to the Islamic school standards of education. I didn't make it to the real life's standard of education. And there was a lot of ways that you could have finessed it. So I'm very lucky in that way that I if it was a public school, I probably wouldn't have survived, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put me in a place that I needed to survive, right? Yeah. And that's what happened. Now, earlier I told you that, this Islamic school in particular, they gave discounted or no cost tuition to some families if the parents decided that they were going to teach. Now, my mom, at this point, she's physically, she's going through disability because she's super sick. She's gone through so much. Basically, the trauma of all those things that she experienced. My mom has quite a story herself too. She at this point was just she was just struggling, right? So she couldn't do it. So instead, I had to make up for that. So I would volunteer every single day. So basically, the school became my life. I was there till I would come after Fajr, and I would leave at 8 o'clock at night, right? Volunteering with everything. It was so funny. There would be some classes I'm taking the class, and after the class, I'm grading the papers with the teachers. Right? And we were just bonding while doing it, right? It wasn't, and it was no favoritism at all, right? It was just genuine me, and a lot of people used to criticize me and tell me I was a kiss up or a teacher's pet. I genuinely wasn't. I felt more comfortable being around people who were older than me than people who were younger than me or my age.
It's just your life.
Yeah. So I used to hang out with them all the time. And there's this one guy, and I'm gonna give a shout out right now. His name is Brother Ihsan. I forgot his last name. Popal, I think. So he's Afghani, right?
Is that? Does he have a son?
He doesn't have a son, but he has relatives that I don't think you guys know, but if you're, I don't think you know them.
Yeah, I think I know them based on last name.
Yeah, so Brother Hassan was this young teacher who just came, I think, during the end of my first year or during the beginning of the second year, and he was our biology teacher, basically a science teacher. He was someone who was studying to become a doctor, to get into med school, and he was just cool. He was really good at ball. All the kids used to love him. And he used to wonder, why would I stay so late, right? And then one day he was why don't you... he was I'll drop you off home. And he was driving me off home, and, he just asked me questions, and I told him. It was late at night, around it was 9, 10 o'clock. And we just bonded. I told him everything, and he just, for the first time ever, a male figure, someone who, I looked up to, right? Acknowledged my existence, one, and then told me that I can do it, right? That was the first time. And then it just compiled after that. He wasn't the only one. So many other people who Sister Salafa, Sister Maryam, right? Sister Kosar, other Brother Hassan, there's a few other people too, right, whose names like I just can't bring up at the moment. I can't think of them. But like these people,
and these were the same teachers that
these were all teachers who spent time after school. They advocated for me, they pushed me, they encouraged me to grow, and they challenged me. And you know, outside of the resources of the school, which is very important, they did it on their own time. And honestly, man, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the love that I have for education. I wouldn't have gotten this far if it weren't for these people, right? So they really encouraged me. So the principal, he challenged me. He was like, sure, if you can meet the requirements, I'll let you graduate in 11th grade. So I remember it was now 11th grade. I'm almost done with all the requirements, and I memorized the Quran, but I really didn't. I just cheated my way through it because that's what they were like. They literally encouraged you in some way to do that. Like, I remember I would literally check the paper in front of him, and I was a kid, right? So he looks at me and he doesn't say anything. I'm like, okay. So I'm just reading off of the Quran. He's just smiling because he's just like, I just need to write you off, right? So I don't call myself a Hafiz, even though that, that school recognizes me as one. I do love them and appreciate all of them, and they're great people, right? But at the same time, I hold myself to a higher standard now, and I just don't acknowledge that accomplishment, right? So, because I don't remember anything, so you should not. I have a certain definition of what it means to be a Hafiz. I'm just not that simple, but right? So I memorized the Quran. I remember I went to Middlesex and I took classes during the summer. I took geometry, which I cried in class and at home because of how hard it was. I took some other math classes. I took psychology, which I fell in love with. I was acing that class as a high schooler. And then later on at the end of the class, the teacher told everyone that I was a high schooler and I wasn't a college student. And they were like, no way, because I was literally answering questions left and right. But at that time I didn't know I was going to pursue psychology because I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor because my mom wanted me to be a doctor, not because I wanted to be one. I wanted to be an artist. That's something I still want to be. But there was something that I was good at and something I wanted to do. I was good at connecting with people. I was good at seeing the little between the lines, hearing understanding the silence, right? Things that people my age weren't able to do at that time, right? But I enjoyed art. I enjoyed videography. I enjoyed drawing. I enjoyed, and I had this whole dilemma, which is is it halal to draw comic books or whatever, right? So this kind of prevented me from growing in that field, unfortunately. But anyways, I remember in the middle or in the beginning of 11th grade, the principal comes to me and the principal is like, oh, we've increased the requirements of you graduating early. So I was like, oh, dang. I literally just accomplished them, right? Yeah. So I was like,
and by this point, you had basically been done with them.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what are the accomplishments? He's like, what is your SAT score again? I realized what he was trying to do, so I lied. I gave him a lower number. I was like, this is my score, and it was a ridiculously low score, right? Which I thought he was gonna expect from me, right? So he was like, oh, this is the score. And I pretended to get all sad. But the reality is I already got that score. So I was like pretending to be sad and everything. Wow. And I was like,
wait, what was the point of him doing that for you?
I realized later, he tells me later on what was the reason, right? So, because I was the only kid on track to graduating early, right? Eventually later on, I found out he had a conversation with me. At this point, I'm basically part of their family. Everyone, all the teachers know me. All the teachers. I started the student council in that school, and what's funny? I started the student council by watching an anime. So I don't know what student councils are. Angel Beats. So So for those of you who don't know, Angel Beats is an anime about what happens to kids when they pass away, but they're not being sent to heaven. So what happens in between? They're kind of coming to terms
limbo,
they're kind of coming to terms with their death and everything like that. So they live in this school setting, right? And they're supposed to live their lives as regular high schoolers. It's very poetic when you think about it, but I'm not spoiling it. But basically, the main characters are part of a club that is designed to fight God, right? But they attend club activities and stuff like that. And I was like, And I watched Clanad too at the same time, and the Spring Festival and all that. How all the they have the student body, president, and all this. I was like, this is amazing. It's like a government in a school. I didn't know that public schools and all that had that because keep in mind, I never went there, right? So I was telling my my teachers and my advisor, I was like, I want to start this. Like, yeah, this is student council. We can start one. So I started the whole thing. I launched the whole thing.
You didn't get elected, did you?
I became the president.
Okay.
I became the president for 2 consecutive years. The girls were so... I love this. I don't know why. I just had this weird camaraderie with the girls because the girls were the overachievers and all the guys were just a bunch of idiots. And we were all separated, right? But they knew that there's this one kid who's brown, right? Because they're all majority African-American or Egyptian. There's this one brown kid who's a guy who just like, the teachers love him, right? That bothered all the smart girls that for some reason... I enjoyed. I don't know why. I was like, yeah, in your face, right? I guess I was going through that kindergarten, like, ew, cootie phase, right? At 15 years old or 16 years old. So what ended up happening was that I started student council and everything like that. So I have an impressive, like, high school resume at this point, right? For this school. So later on, the principal brings me and he's like, look, Danyal, you know that, I love you and I respect you as for everything you've done. But I want to be honest with you. He's like, we're not going to let you graduate in 11th grade. I was like, why not? Like, that's not fair. And he was like, I'm going to be very vague about this because I don't want to be very detailed. But basically, he said that there's other kids on the girls' side who are a lot younger than you and a lot less mature than you who also want to graduate early. But I cannot allow that to happen because they're not ready for the real world. Like, he's like, they're very young and immature. He's like, but if I allow you to do it, I have to allow them to do it. So he's like, so we're completely terminating the program. And I was heartbroken. I was like genuinely heartbroken. I was like, that's not fair, right? I worked really hard. And I did. I genuinely worked really hard. I don't know. I worked really hard.
Were you the first person that this program had that was on track to do that?
No, so the outside of his sons, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was the first one outside of his sons to be on track, yeah.
That's just...
Yeah, so I kind of gave up. I remember then right before the graduation, I was already working on like looking into schools and stuff with the teacher, but I kind of like stopped doing that. Didn't apply for financial aid or anything. And then right before the graduation, my advisor, Sister Salafa, right? She comes to me and she's like, Danyal, aren't you supposed to be graduating? I'm like, no, the principal's not letting me graduate. I just realized that by me saying the teachers' names, people are going to already know what school this is. But I'm assuming the only people who go to the school are probably going to know, right? Yeah, so hopefully it'll be okay. And of course,
like, probably know given other context.
Yeah, and at the same time, if anyone from the school is watching, I love you all. You're still great. You know what I mean? But it's just what happened. Right? Just what happened. Yeah. So what ended up happening was that she was like, aren't you going to graduate? I was like, no, they said I couldn't graduate. And she's like, oh, Danyal, aren't you going to graduate? And I was like, am I going to graduate? She's like, well, I have your transcripts printed out. I already wrote your letter of recommendations. Danyal, you're graduating. And I was like, huh? She's like, Danyal, you got to pay me the $100 for your cap and gown and go to the graduation, practice the graduation. You're going to graduate this weekend.
And the principal had no idea.
I was so confused.
So
was this in 11th or 12th grade?
So this was in 11th grade. So basically, she was going to stick her neck out for me. Like, she was going to make it happen.
Wow. What?
So...
Dude, this...
Yeah, so I graduated. If I remember correctly, my diploma... So the principal does. Yeah. It turns... If I remember correctly, I think my diploma was the only diploma that didn't have the principal's signature yet. Like, he had to sign it. If I remember correctly, I don't know. Maybe I'm just making some of mine. But I remember it. That he had to sign it up. And he, shook my head. He was like, good job, Danyal. I was like, yeah, thank you. And
then, but I thought this all happened, he had no idea. When...
No, he didn't. I don't know the details. I think she told him that, she kind of vouched for me, right? But it wasn't planned. Literally, this is the same week.
The week.
Yeah, so week before. So he was like, okay, whatever, right? So... Thank God. Obviously, I'm sure there was a lot of parents who were upset. Yeah. But I'm while I'm talking, I'm actually gonna pull up a picture so you guys can see because I have pictures. I want you guys to see them. But the teachers were obviously very upset that I'm not the teachers. I'm sorry, the students were very upset that I graduated early. But I did. Alhamdulillah. I remember.
You the last of your kind?
No. I wasn't last of my kind. Everything changed with the fire. No. I was not the last of my kind. There was, I think, 2 more students who graduated early after me, and the next year who were.
I have a friend who did this. He's 25. How did our friend do this?
So anyways.
Well, actually, I don't know the specifics of our friends.
Yeah, you make this shit up, but yeah.
So what ended up happening was that now I'm caught up, right? But here's the problem: I didn't apply to any university.
Oh, no.
I applied to financial aid. I'm like, God. And now here's the thing: I'm living in this false reality in my head now. I'm like, I can do anything. I'm the smartest kid in this school. I could get into Princeton and I could go to medical school, right? Like, I'm literally thinking I'm the, I'm the stuff right now, right? And then I applied to Middlesex County, the only college I applied to at the time, and I never got a response from them. So I thought to myself, oh crap, that's when harsh reality kicked in, right? I was like, if Middlesex is not going to accept me, what university is going to accept me? Turns out that we just lost the mail. I was
about to say, they can't
I got accepted, but I didn't know. But I didn't even bother applying to Rutgers at this time. And then I had other things that were going on that I mentioned to you guys off camera that just I felt very intimidated to go to Rutgers because I didn't want to confront those rumors that were being spread about me. Anyways, just to quickly summarize, my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, she's a family member. She told me to apply to St. Peter's. Yeah. She was like, just try to get in, see what happens. We'll talk to the dean. I spoke to the dean, and literally the same day, she spoke to the dean. She was a very goody two shoes, very hardworking. She really worked hard for that to be where she is in that university. So she was very well known with a lot of some influential people in the university. It's a Jesuit university, so the priests were very very well known, and she was very well known with them. So she spoke to one of them.
Your mom, this was, right?
Who?
Wait, who?
Your wife.
My wife. My wife, who's not my wife at the time. She's my she's my cousin, right? She's related to me.
Right.
So sorry if that made anyone feel uncomfortable. It's normal in my culture. Anyway, so what ended up, I'm just trying to look for the picture. Sorry. I have this.
Okay, let us provide. I feel like me and Aisha should contribute to this podcast.
I'm so sorry, guys.
I enjoyed it. I have.
So here you go. This is Brother Ihsan. And he's giving me
this was on the day of your graduation.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, so I was actually very skinny when I was young.
He looks like a Nadi.
No.
Yes, he does. Muhammad Nadi's younger brother, for sure. Because I just played soccer against him. That's
wow.
right. Dude, oh my god. Are you crying?
This was an emotional time.
Yeah, man. I think every single time I've graduated or anything, every single time when there ever been a major accomplishment in my life, I always have this moment where my mom hugs me, and I always cry, and I just say, I'm sorry, I wish I could have done better or whatever. And she always says, West Resident here, that she's proud of me. My mom and I, we don't necessarily get along all the time. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of differences, as well as much as even though, when I got older, it's gone a lot worse. Yeah. But I genuinely love her, and I'm genuinely proud of everything she's accomplished. Yes, I have disagreements with her in terms of how I was raised and everything. But it's something that I had to understand was that, she did the best she could with the resources that she was given. Just imagine, what we went through. Just imagine what she went through. You know what I mean? She's our mother, She was an adult. She saw, a lot more than what we did. So,
and she also had to protect you guys.
She had to protect us, you know what I mean? I can never thank her enough. And, I do sometimes come off as, maybe a little ungrateful. Mm-hmm. My method of and this is something I guess if we talk about later on in the podcast in terms of where I am now, but I am focusing on myself, my development, my improvement, right? And I'm hoping that by doing that and by choosing to live a healthier lifestyle and a more productive lifestyle, that inshallah, and one thing I've always done for myself, did to myself, was put myself in a higher standard, because I wanted my siblings to realize that it's not impossible. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to grad school because I wanted to, right? I have plans to eventually go for my PhD. I don't do that because I want to. I do that because I have that standard for myself. Because I want to prove to myself, prove to a lot of other people, but in more particular, prove to my siblings that, hey, it's possible. I did it. You know what I mean? And I started school a lot later than them. I was 15, didn't know anything, right? They started off younger. They had a kind of a jump start. So that's kind of I've always held myself to that standard. That was my way of being there for them. Right. But back to the time with my mom. So my mom, we always have every single time when I graduate with my high school, undergrad, and grad school, Like, there's always that moment. Someone has always captured it. Just basically, I'm hugging my mom, I'm crying, and my mom is just whispering that she's proud of me, right? And that's what I live for. That's honestly what I live for. Yeah. And I don't just say that. Like, I genuinely mean it. Like, she's, even though we do have our disagreements, whatever, and, you know, we might not get along all the time, I have absolutely nothing but respect for that woman. And, you know, it hurts me that the journey that I've picked to do, chosen to do, has caused, like, some conflict. But I think it's needed for growth. Like, anything that's good doesn't come easy. Like, anything that's like growth is never, and, you know, like, I don't know, maybe I'm doing something that's completely wrong, but who knows? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who, you know, like, ultimately decides, and intentions are, I think, everything. But anywho, so, like, I forgot what we were saying, and I completely forgot.
You just graduated. And
so St. Peter. So she spoke to, so I remember we went to the dean's office, right? My wife spoke to the dean. Explain everything. It's weird calling her my wife, you know, when wasn't my wife at the time, right? We'll just say my cousin. So my cousin, she reached out to, she spoke to the dean, and the dean literally, like, and my mom was actually talking too. And then the dean, like, writes a letter, and she's like, here's a letter. You're going to show this to all the different offices. The last orientation is tomorrow. Get everything done today. You're admitted to St. Peter's University. I was like, I didn't have time to process this. Rusha's
you gotta go, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, my cousin, she, like, let's go. So we went to the registrar office, signed up for financial aid and everything, right? I barely missed, like, I missed EOF. I was supposed to sign up for EOF. The lady that was right in front of us, man, like, she was the last one, and we missed it. I really wish I was in the EOF program, because there's a lot of perks that come with it, like, academically, and I really wish I had that. Because it was a private university, so it was very expensive. Yeah. And then I took the placement exam. Now, here's my thing. This is my mentality now with the placement exam. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I've somehow kind of cheated my way to get to where I am. I'm not proud of it. I've lied a little bit, and I've, you know, done things that were kind of shady, right? By, like, pretending about my SAT score, you know, like, cheating on when it came to memorizing the Quran and stuff. Yeah. Things I'm not really proud about, but I made it to where I am. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to lie to myself. I don't want to make that, because that reality hit when I realized I'm not eligible for Princeton, right? That hit me bad, right? I realized I wasn't smart, right? Like, because literally I'm in so I was like, you know, I don't want that to ever happen again. I need to make sure I'm ready now. So if they place me in a remedial class, which my cousin was like, no, you don't want that to happen, because then those credits are not going to count. I was like, yes, I want that to happen, because at least I'll be caught up. Yeah. Like, at least I'll know my stuff now. I don't have to hide. I don't have to hide behind my story anymore. So I remember I took the placement exam, right? I struggled like anything. I was like, yep, I definitely got into remedial classes. Because I guessed, right? It was like, if I don't know, I guess. I guess, right? So I don't know if it's right or not. I'm like, Bismillah, you know, I clicked C too many times. Let's go with A, right? So then the next day is orientation, and I remember the second day of orientation, we're registering for classes. I remember the advisor, her name was Callahan. Callahan is a biology professor who was one of my professors, and at the time she wasn't. So she comes to me and she's like, okay, let's go over your classes. And she's registering, like, my classes. She's like, okay, so you're going to take statistics for life and sciences for math, and you're going to take English 1. I'm like, 1 minute. Aren't those normal level classes? She's like, yeah. I was like, no, there's been I took a placement exam. Yeah. It was so funny. I said that to my high schools to want to go higher. Remember, I told them I took my placement exam. I should go higher. In college, I'm like, I took my placement exam. I should be lower, right?
I feel like give your priorities backwards.
People you should exactly. That's what Callahan said. So Callahan was like, 1 minute. Are you upset that you got placed into normal math and English? I'm like, no, I just want to be placed in where my level is. She's like, you took an exam. This is your level. I'm not going to put you in a class lower just because you want it. She's like, college is not easy, honey. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. I ended up failing those classes. That's beside the point.
You see, Peter's not taking placement exam seriously. What is up with you?
No, so it turns out that my guessing was very accurate somehow. And thanks to that, I was able to get placed into normal English and math. I barely passed that English. I got a C, right? Which is the class, like, if I got a grade lower, I would have gotten kicked out, right? Like, I would have to retake it.
Degrees, you're fine.
Not in this school. If you get a C, you have to, it's C minus, or, like, you know, a B, a D. You have to retake, especially the core classes. You have to retake them. So I barely passed with a C, right?
Can we take a short break?
Go ahead.
All right, where do we go?
So I ended up I started my By the way, real quick, do you want to continue this? Because we have other things we want to talk about, right?
Honestly,
I just want to hear the end, man.
So we're kind of already at the ending when it comes to how I caught up. So I like basically, worked really hard in undergrad. I was doing biology for like 3 years, really struggling, didn't enjoy it. I would like study till like 2:00 in the morning while my friends studied like till 8 p.m. and they would have A's and I would barely pass with like a B. And I held myself to that standard. One thing that I did. Actually, I'll mention that after, so maybe you could keep that in the thing. We'll talk about that later. But I really like held myself to a higher standard, right? So I third year of college, I decided I was going to switch to psychology. It was a very emotional moment for me because my mom really wanted me to become a doctor. It was something that was very important to her, and it was the first time I ever decided to be selfish. And it really made a huge problem in my family for a very long time, for a while. But I was happy. I was happy, and I was acing it, and I was nailing it, and I loved it. I remember when I was taking my first psych class, and I was taking my first statistic class. Because mind you, the only statistics class I took was my first year, and I almost failed. I had to drop it. So I was so terrified of math. I was like, no way. I remember I was taking the first statistics class, and literally the head of the psychology department teaches it. Dr. Hamilton. And Dr. Hamilton literally, she's like no chill, no mercy, right? And I love her for that now. Hated her at the time, right? She's also my academic advisor too when I switched over. And she was like, more than half of you guys are going to fail this class. And guess what? Though that half that fails, good luck getting your psych degree because it's one of the core requirements. If you can't take this, I'll tell you to take something else. Maybe take something easier like communications. Like she had no chill, right?
Oh my God.
So I was terrified because she's like, barely anyone in my class gets an A. And if you do, I know you're going to go far. I told myself, I'm going to get an A in this class. And I studied really hard. I remember I took the midterm and I was so terrified. And I was talking to her. Like she was very helpful.
Which class was
this is stats class. The first stats you need to get into psych, right? Psych is stats heavy.
Is it like stats like one step forward from the thing you took before? Like
So it was actually the same, but stats for life and sciences was biology related. So this is psych related, right? Okay. But I had more prep time, so I'm 3 years now into college, right? So and I took elementary applied math and other math classes to build me now to this part. Before I went straight to stats and I suffered miserably, right? So I had to drop that class. But I took like classes that counted towards my major, right? But they were easier classes that I needed to review and stuff like that. That really helped me. One of them was a Bobo class, like my Bobo is probably not an appropriate term, but remedial class. But I chose to take it. I didn't need to, but I signed up for it, and I was allowed to take an extra credit class, so I decided to do it anyways. So that really helped me. That helped me. Then I took another class, elementary applied math, and then this was my next step, right? So I was prepared now, right? It's still difficult, but I was prepared more prepared than I was at the beginning. So with that, I was freaking that I almost failed last time, and now she's freaking me out saying that more than half the class fails this class, right? And it's true, like more than half the class actually did fail it. And they had to drop being a psych major. I remember like some girls cried because this was like their thing. They're like, this was it, and now they don't have anything else to drop on, right? So they decided they were going to retake, and she's like, it's not worth it. Like you're just wasting your time. But they did retake it. Alhamdulillah, some of them did, and they ended up graduating with a degree. But anyway, so I remember when I was about to take the midterm, I was studying with her, right? Because she was my advisor. I was asking her for advice. I was like, she was helping out. So I was like,
office hours or something like that.
Yeah, office hours. So one thing I actually did throughout my undergrad, even if the class was easy, is I always spoke with the professor after class. If I didn't, like not all the time when it came to speaking after class, but I would always go during office hours. At least once, have a private conversation with them. Let them know who I am, show them what I appreciate about them, and learn from them. Even if I don't need any help, just to give them that value. Because I wanted to be a professor. Like that's something I still kind of want to do, but I wanted to be a professor. I was like, I just want to teach people. And I used to teach at Islamic school at the time, right? Like a Sunday school. So I really enjoyed that. So I understand how important it is, like how good it feels when your students acknowledge you. And I wanted to just give that back. So that's what I would do, right? So in most cases, I actually needed to learn. Very few cases that I actually didn't need to learn, and I went to them, right? Like my art classes, I aced them while sleeping. I was exempt from the final exam. I'm such a nerd. I hate it. Like when it came to this situation, there was this art class that I was just acing, right? I was exempt from the final, and I got sad. And I told him, can I still take the final? He was like, why? Because I want to challenge myself. He was like, you're a weird kid. But it mattered to me, and I was the first one to get the final out of the way. I felt so good about myself. Like I was just like these are the things that give me joy. Like this was like a competition. Like I love games, and I get very competitive. I get competitive when it comes to grades, right? I just just me. So I was not like that during grad school, though. Grad school was like C's get degrees, right? But in undergrad, no, I was like an overachiever. I worked really hard to get those A's and B's, right? So, and also I did really bad my first semester, so my GPA dropped. So it took me all 3 years, like the rest of my college years, to basically build that a bunch. Like I never got any C's or D's after that. But I swear to God, getting your GPA from a 2.4 up to the 3s took me 3 years of A's and B's. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. I thought it was just one semester. I can make it up in one semester. It's easy to fail. It's harder to pass. And so
that's so true.
It's so bad. So alhamdulillah, I was able to pass with a good GPA after I graduated. Not great for a psychology major. Like a psychology major is easily graduate with like 4.0 GPAs because it's fair. It's compared to other sciences, it is an easier field, right? Especially if you kind of have like the knack for it or knack. I don't know what the word is. Knack for it. So I was like I had the lowest GPA compared to my peers that I compared myself to, but if I compare myself to the average Joe, I did pretty well. And I remember this class, right? I was telling Hamilton, I was like, Dr. Hamilton, I don't think I'm gonna do well on your midterm. She's like, if you fail the midterm, good luck passing the rest of the class. She's like, I would just tell you to drop it. Don't worry about the GPA and just try something else. Maybe this is not for you. It's not for everyone. She's like, and I just I didn't want to hear that from her. And I passed the midterm with an A. And she literally gave me the paper and she went like this. And so that was my midterm. It was a morale boost. And I remember I would chill in the front desk of the psychology department, just chill with the front desk lady. We would talk for hours. The teachers would come like, hey, there was this one teacher who was like, she was like very educated, old, like Hispanic teacher. She would always be like, my darlings, right? So she would be like, my darling, what you doing here? Why don't you go home? Like, I don't want to go home. And I would just be like studying.
I can when you said she did that gesture, like when she just did the little pat, I can just feel that
my head was in the clouds because she was like the beast of the psychology department. Everyone was intimidated by her. People hated her because of how harsh she was. I was intimidated by her too. But when someone like that acknowledges you, it means so much. And it did. And alhamdulillah, I graduated that stats class with an A. And I graduated, I passed every of my psych classes with an AB average. And it just felt really good. I just knew that it was right. I got during my first, literally my first semester of being a psych major, I got into an internship program, not internship. I got a work study gig for the psychology department. I was a research assistant for my professor. Opportunities just opened up. Opportunities that weren't opening up when I was a bio major, right? So I was like, this is what it is. But I was trying to double major with graphic design and psych, but I was trying to also get married on time. I was trying to graduate on time. Me being a double major was going to require me to stay late, and I didn't mind, but I realized that it was going to affect my potential marriage. So I decided to drop the graphic designs major, and I just graduated with in 2017. I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology. I remember I was at Rutgers on campus, just chilling with some of my friends when I got the news that I got into Rutgers, New Brunswick for social work, grad school. I didn't think I was going to get in. I was like, this is grad school.
Rutgers, New Brunswick is really good for graduate.
So I was like, there's no way I'm getting there. My GPA is crap compared to other psych students, right? I was in the 3s, but I was in the early 3s, low 3s, not I wasn't, so 3.2, right? I was like, that's not great, but
hard work pays off. Hard work definitely pays off.
So alhamdulillah, I remember when I got the letter, right? The letter came to my aunt's house because for a year my family moved to Pennsylvania, so I was living with my extended family. So my address didn't change back, and I remember my aunt called me and she was like, sorry, I couldn't wait. Congratulations. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I kind of lost hope. I didn't think I was getting in. I was taking their sweet time, right? Yeah. And she was like, you got in. I was like, where? Which one? She was like, you got into Rutgers, which was my ideal school. Yeah.
There's everything you had worked for up until that moment. Just kind of.
I got into grad school.
Wow.
I got into grad school and.
You didn't just get in. You graduated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now I graduated, right? I got into grad school. I was married. I was trying to figure out family stuff at the same time. I eventually started working full-time while going to grad school full-time. I ended up moving out and lived on my own with my wife during the second year of grad school. I found out my wife was pregnant during the last semester. Not the last semester. The last year, like the end of fall semester. And shortly after I graduated, my son was born. It just had like everything happened like back to back to back, right? Like as soon as I got married, I went to my honeymoon. I came back, grad school, right? Grad school was a tornado in itself. I actually gained. So you saw the picture of me when I was in high school.
I was about to say, yeah,
I was that skinny my entire life. It was during grad school that I gained weight. Like
your face is filled out now. It's not bad.
It is, but I don't like it. Like I am overweight. Like I don't look it. I hide it very well, but I am overweight. Like for my height to body ratio, whatever, I'm not even like remote. Like kind of, I am overweight.
Wait, like BMI or like
BMI? Yeah.
I'm overweight.
But those are.
Well, it doesn't matter, bro. I feel nasty. Okay.
Oh, your face looks more. I don't know. About
I feel weird that we're talking about my face on camera right now. But I really appreciate it.
No, but like so okay. So is that the end? Have you caught up?
Yeah. So like I caught up in school and everything, right? And I'm who I am today. It's been a year since then. I graduated in 2019 with my master's. My son was born that same summer. I took on the national director role with Ignore Relief around that time. And yeah, it's like 1 year later, I'm here and just taking it a day at a time.
I just want to say that in the beginning of the podcast, me and Arsha talked about how we've been doing this for 2.5 months, right? 2.5, almost 3 months. And I'm speaking from my experience. I don't know about Arsha, but I feel like the best thing about these podcasts is that we hear, even if they're our friends or ourselves, we hear perspective and stories from people, right? And we're always just like, damn, that's crazy. Or like, damn, that's wild. And like, just, I don't know how much we're going to edit.
I think, you know what? I was just about to say, I think we're about to... I think this could be a first where we have a whole separate, maybe not a part 1 or 2, but a whole, if you're comfortable with it, like a whole separate video just for your story. Just because I think.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I would prefer that because the main intention, right, for inviting me over and what I intended to do was actually talk more about community issues, not more so about myself. But I know that this tends to happen. I appreciate you guys listening, by the way. But I would like to separate it so we can focus on like things.